am just here to talk a little bit about the Rogue Moons novel now that it is out, just in case anybody wants to hear a perspective on it. Figured this makes a pretty good blog post, right? So, um, so first of all, this is my first book and I am still figuring things out as I go along. But, ever since I was a kid, I wanted to become an author. After learning to read and write, one of the first things that I started doing with my free time was to write and illustrate silly books. And I'd staple the pages together, and my mom would store them in a filing cabinet. Now I have them packed away somewhere in my house. Evidence of my earliest passions and endeavors, attempts. When I was around 10 or 11 years old, I wrote what might generously be called a novella. My dad got one of his friends to let me use his illustration software program to make the cover, and then he got it professionally bound. So now only 2 copies of that book exist in the whole world. I have one of them, and the other one went to my elementary school library after the librarian read it and wrote me a very nice note about it. Oh, this is Teddy. Hi, you want to say hi, Teddy? Say hi! For those who are probably going to ask, he is an Aussie Doodle. Part Australian Shepherd and part Poodle. And he's a sweetheart. The only things that he wants in life are to love and be loved. A lot of people are intimidated by his size at first, but yeah, he's really a teddy bear. That's why we call him Teddy. I know, you want to stay here while I talk? Here, we'll keep the camera on you too. Come on. Good boy. Good boy. Come here. Come on. Oh, that's all right. Okay. I need to see my notes, though. I need to see my notes, buddy. Okay. So, okay. So a few years ago, I heard that the librarian at my elementary school library had retired, and that the new one got rid of the book. I heard this from a sister, one of my sisters whose kids attended the school where we all had gone to elementary school. So I called and left a voicemail asking about the book. I hoped that I would be able to get it back. I understood if they didn't want to keep it at the library anymore, but it was a piece of my history. So anyway, I never heard back. I was heartbroken, but I decided to just let it go. After all, at least I still had one copy. And, if they got rid of the book, if that meant that they threw it away or something, not much I could do about that. Anyway, I've continued to write since then, obviously. As a teenager, I finished a 300-something page video game script, which has since been lost. Somewhere over the course of transferring data to different computers over the years as I got different ones. And in the ensuing years, I started and abandoned many other writing projects. From my early adulthood to now, I've maintained copious notes of stories that I want to write, lists of vague concepts that I'd like to expand or combine with each other, and even quotes that I hear or say that I think would be great for dialogue someday. If you've ever known me in real life, you might have heard me say at some point, "Oh, I'm going to write that down as a quote. It might go in a book." And when I went through a period of severe depression several years ago, I stopped writing stories or being creative at all, and sort of went down a mildly self-destructive path. I didn't fully reignite my drive and my imagination until I wrote several fan fictions inspired by a movie that just somehow woke me up, and that movie remains close to my heart. One of those fan fictions surpassed 100,000 words, and some of it was adapted for the Obsidian Gods trilogy. The Rogue Moons is therefore a culmination of around 30 years of passion and perseverance and practice. A lot of all of those things. And I know it's not perfect, but it's precious to me as the first novel that I completed and shared with the world, and I am proud of it. I'm confident in it. I'm confident that it's at least a good start after 30 years of the 3 Ps, the passion, perseverance, and practice. I'm not entirely sure what else to say about the Rogue Moons or the Obsidian Gods trilogy right now, mainly because I don't know what people might want to hear, and because I want to avoid spoilers. But based on what I usually like to hear from authors, you know, when I love a book enough to try to find out more about the author and the story, I'll focus on a couple discussion points. First, where did the Rogue Moons come from? And the Obsidian Gods trilogy in general, where did they come from? I did mention that they were adapted from a fan fiction, but there's really no easy answer to that. It's not quite that simple. I remember idly wondering one day, years ago maybe, what the world would be like with 2 moons instead of 1. It's possible that the thought occurred to me because of the video game Chrono Cross, which is a sequel to one of my very favorite video games of all time, Chrono Trigger. But I can't say for sure. I really don't remember where I was or what I was doing at the time that the thought occurred to me. But anyway, I wrote it down, and it stayed on my list of undeveloped story concepts for years. And then while browsing Pinterest one day, I saw a post from Tumblr. Like, I've never actually been on Tumblr myself, but I see a lot of things reposted from Tumblr, especially on Pinterest. And this post was about how amusing it would be for a superhero and a supervillain to live together as roommates, fighting each other as their alter egos, but being friends or lovers in their domestic life together, unaware of their true identities. And I agreed that it had potential. Like, it made me chuckle. So I saved the pin to a board that I keep for more story ideas, even outside of the list that I keep when the random thoughts occur to me. So that was still fresh on my mind when I fixated on the movie that got me back into writing through fan fiction. And I realized it would be great for the 2 main characters of the movie in question. So I developed it and started writing, and it was like a dam broke in my mind, and the creativity was finally flowing again. It took a couple years, but I eventually finished that fan fiction, and I was so proud and excited that I wanted to adapt it into an original novel. So I reviewed my list of vague, undeveloped concepts, and immediately saw that my note about a world where with 2 moons would work perfectly in a situation like this. It would add an additional layer of depth and entertainment, both. From there, ideas just kept dropping into my mind like pieces of a puzzle that I worked hard to put together. I spent another 2 or 3 years making adjustments and expanding storylines, creating a different world, and just writing it all out. I wish it hadn't taken me that long, but unfortunately, writing is not the only thing that I do with my life. At least not yet. During that time, I had also advanced in my career, and I improved my relationships with my loved ones, and I got into a better financial situation. almost a year after I finished it, I also saw a therapist and tried depression medication. Don't want to stop. I tried depression. No. Don't try depression. It's a bad thing. It's a bad idea. I tried depression medication for the first time, and it was life-changing. My internal and external life kept improving step by step, and as they did, my ability to consistently access my creativity improved as well. The more I used it, the more ideas that came to me, and the more I could bring myself to do. So mental, emotional, and financial health, you guys, they are so important. Without it, I would never have been able to make this book, nor the music albums, nor the Nerdy Workouts project, and that would have been the least of my worries. As for what was on my mind at the time, when I was writing those fan fictions and the earliest drafts of the Rogue Moons, I was becoming more informed and sensitive to political and cultural issues. I mean, I'd been interested in those things for a long time, but it was intensifying. I felt lost and frustrated and even angry with the way that things were changing in the United States, or maybe just realizing how they had always been. I was often worried about my family and friends, what we should do, how we could navigate all these problems, etc. And the movie that inspired the fan fictions was beautifully thought-provoking in these areas too. So with all these feelings and concerns constantly in my mind, I wanted to explore themes about justice, prejudice, change, the extremes people, the extremes people might go for those things, and making mistakes while trying to do the right thing, growing from that, getting lost and finding yourself again. Things like that. As far as those themes are concerned, the Rogue Moons is really just the tip of the iceberg. They're important themes to me, though. So I hope to get them across as well, really well, throughout the Obsidian Gods trilogy. I also hope that you will forgive a first-time self-published writer her mistakes and immaturity. Like I said, I'm figuring this out as I go along. There's so much more that I intend to create, though. And publishing this book is a precious, long-awaited first step. And I believe it's a great first step. But it is just that, a first step. Taken after 30 years of crawling, metaphorically speaking. So, please, stick with me. Stick with me. I promise it'll get even better because I'm going to work at it. Thank you for being here. Teddy, you want to come say goodbye? Say bye-bye. Say bye-bye. Say bye. Bye.